Hey, good afternoon and good morning, everybody. My name is Dave Linthicum. I'm a Senior Vice President with Cloud Technology Partners, also a Gigaom Pro Analyst, and today excited to deliver to you some great information on mastering the business side of cloud, including software as a service and infrastructure as a service. And looking forward to the webinar today, when this one's going to be sponsored by Interworks, and you can find them at interworks.com. So moving forward, let's talk about the agenda for today's webinar. Number one, we're going to provide introductions to the panelists. We're going to talk about how about business management services and how they're handled by infrastructure as a service and SaaS providers today. We're going to talk about the alternatives. We're going to talk about the strengths and weaknesses of the different approaches. We're going to talk about data fragmentation and mitigate it into where they are integrated in the cloud data ecosystem. We're going to talk about lessons learned from providers out there and and bring that information to you, and as well as have question and answers in terms of how all this stuff is going to come together. So you will, as the attendee, have an opportunity to question us, the panelists, in terms of this topic. So while we're speaking, please make sure to utilize the question and answer feature of go-to-webinar.com, which is right there on your terminal there. As you think through it, go ahead and type a question, and we will, if there's time, get back to you with a response. So let's get going. First, I'd like to turn it over to our sponsor, which is InterSystems, and you can find them at intersystemscloud.com. Sorry, interworkscloud.com. My bad. Okay. So let's go ahead and first introduce our panelists. First, my name is Dave Linthicum, Gigaom Research Analyst and Senior Vice President of Cloud Technology Partners. George, CEO and founder of Data Orchestration. Janakiram, who's the Principal Analyst, Janakiram Associates, and Eva, who's the Chief Marketing Manager at Interworks. Good morning, guys. How you doing?
Fine. Thank you. Thank you, Dave, for the introduction. Hi there. I'm Evi, responsible for product marketing in Interworks. Just a short introduction from my side. Interworks has been an established cloud service provider for many years. 2 years ago, we introduced the concept of the cloud business operating system, and we managed to get a lot of attraction by both analysts and service providers. The cloud business operating system bridges the gap between provisioning and the business layer with advanced billing, CRM, and marketplace functionalities, all in one unified platform. Change slide, David, please. Can you change that? Thank you. Yeah, let me elaborate a little bit on that, the concept of the cloud business operating system. We know that service providers face challenges. They need to scale up at no time. They need to be flexible. They need to differentiate. They need to give their customers a great user experience, ranging from browsing of a particular service portfolio and the opt-in option to the level that customers can instantly consume services. The CRM concept is extremely important too. Many customers, many subscriptions, many services, and complex processes. In order for service providers to check their level of adoption, they need to ask simple questions like how end customers order their services, can they bill services to customers, can they receive payments and manage subscriptions, can they provision services to customers through a marketplace, can their business expand and support their sellers, if any. All these are offered in the CBOS concept, automation, rationalization, all in a single pane of glass. Can you change slide? Dave? And as I said, we have a number of customers all over the world that use our platform, and all of them have shown significant results in their business, high performance improvement, and high revenue growth in their cloud business. Dave, back to you now. Thank you. an interesting poll question here.
All right, let's go ahead and go to the poll question here. Is your enterprise currently considering the business side of software as a service and infrastructure as a service? Your responses are 1, not at all, not yet, but will in the future. It has been considered from the start. And go ahead and respond now. So Evi, what do you think the question, the response is going to be? What do you think is going to be the most important, the most prevailing answer?
What I can say is not yet, but will in the future. We know that service providers face those challenges, and they want it. They're just looking. They have not decided yet. That's my experience. I don't know. We'll see. I guess we'll see. I don't know.
So George, what do you think the response is going to be?
Actually, I think I tend to agree with Evi there. I mean, we're not at the very early stage where it was basically all about infrastructure, and people were struggling with that, and we're not at full adoption either yet. So I guess it's going to be somewhere in between.
So the response came back 8%, not at all. 43% not yet, but within the future. 49% it has been considered from the start. You guys, anybody on the panel find this surprising?
Yeah, me too. Not at all. That's not my experience.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, great.
So, Janakiram, what do you think on the results? Do you think that this is pretty much in line with what your expectations are, or like Evi, do you think it's rather surprising results?
No, Dave, it's not surprising. I think if you actually look at the current landscape, everyone is focused more on delivering the right quality of service, whether it's infrastructure or SaaS. The market hasn't really matured to an extent where the customers are really looking at even having the business management completely baked into the offerings. I think this is pretty early in the curve. We're going to see this more often in the future, but as of now, I think the providers are primarily looking at strengthening their offerings rather than having a very comprehensive suite that's going to help them integrate with their backend systems. So it's not really surprising to me.
Well, I think that ultimately that it's a future sort of looking thing. I think that this is one of those things that people have on the radar screen. They're not implementing yet, but they will in a very short period of time. And I think it's going to be within the next year that they look at this technology and they look at moving in this direction. So let's move to our first question, panel. How are business management services being handled by infrastructure as a service and software as a service providers today? And George, I'm going to go to you first. How would you respond to this?
Well, that's
Evi, I go to you.
a good one. And
sorry, George, continue.
No worries. If you want, you can take this answer, and you can get back to me.
No, go ahead, George.
All right. Good. Well, it's a good one, and actually, I'm glad to be discussing it with you because what I'm going to say is somehow related to some of the work you have done. So, like I said earlier, we're kind of past the early cloud days when people were struggling with infrastructure, and now we have hybrid clouds and multi-clouds and all that good stuff. So it's all about cloud management platforms these days, and the work we did with Joe, our research director, Joe Maitland, he defined the cloud management platforms as being the new buzzword applied to a group of technologies that take different approaches to managing cloud-based systems and leverage multi-cloud type of architectures. So yeah, obviously, this is a very hot area, and as the cloud offerings diversify, we're going to need we're going to rely quite heavily on CMPs. The thing is that it's still the early days, so most of them are focusing on the technical aspect, and it's not surprising. So being able to juggle among all these possible options is not an easy thing, and it requires considerable effort. And while this is all fine and good, and these solutions make sure that the user experience is as seamless as one can expect, it's also interesting to note that they're mostly addressed to technical users. So the ones that are in charge of making sure everything is working as it should, provisioned, and ready to go, and basically serving business needs. But they're not the business users themselves. So what about the business side of infrastructure and platform as a service? I think it takes a different approach to enable service and application providers to scale up to their businesses using cloud infrastructure. And we see most vendors are there to serve the IT departments and not the business users. So it's a valid approach, but we must ask ourselves if this is the only one. And it seems we're at the point where a special class of CMPs is rising, and one that is mostly concerned with things like application modeling or customer relationship management rather than provisioning and cloud balancing. Of course, they do rely on them, but it's a different level, let's say.
I think that's a great response. Evi, do you agree with him, or do you think you have a different take on this?
Yeah, I totally agree. And I need to say that what we see here now is service providers' operations are mainly based on dispersed systems. They especially face challenges at legacy systems, which do not support the subscriptions management and recurring subscriptions. Instead of that, they use the option of recurring invoicing. But what if the subscription ends? What about downgrades or upgrades or the addition or cancellation of an add-on? Apart from the legacy systems, what service providers do is that they try to integrate the CMS and provisioning. Moreover, they use a CRM-like software, which may vary from an Excel spreadsheet to an enterprise-level CRM. What we see are many systems and many integrations.
Okay. Janakiram, you want to bring us home and tell us what we're missing around this piece of information and what should be understood. How business management services being handled by infrastructure and SaaS providers today is it even considered, do you think?
Very interesting topic, Dave. Actually, I want to draw an analogy with the e-commerce industry. If you actually look at the current IaaS and SaaS marketplace, it's actually closely resembling the e-commerce industry in its early days. So just like an e-commerce has two elements, one is basically the customer-facing portal and the experience, the cataloging, and so on. The back end of an e-commerce portal or an e-commerce business is all about supply chain management and making sure that they deliver it on time. So the analogy actually goes much beyond that. Now, there are SLAs, and the whole similarity is between delivering a service where the customer buys, and then there is an SLA provided by the SaaS or IaaS providers to actually meet that. So in a lot of ways, today's IaaS marketplace resembles closely the e-commerce of early 2000. So having said that, currently there is no good storefront software that's actually available out of the box. There are companies like Interworks and then NSYM who are actually doing their own bit of bringing this layer on top. But currently the IaaS and SaaS players are kind of struggling to come out with a single pane of glass that's going to give the complete so-called shopping experience to the customers, and also integrate it effectively with their backend systems like CRM, ERP, and manage the whole so-called supply chain of the cloud business. So unfortunately, this is not being considered today because it's too early, and the players are too busy caught up in making sure that the SLAs are meeting the competitive offerings and the price point is met and the SLAs are met. But going forward, once the cloud industry starts to look more like the telco industry where everything becomes commoditized, this becomes the key differentiating factor. So this is just at the beginning of that cycle, and we'll see this more often as IaaS becomes much more prevalent.
I think that's a great response. I like the fact that I think everybody is seeking, this elusive single pane of glass, but we don't seem to be able to find it these days, at least not with a single solution. So let's focus on that. So what are all the alternatives out there? And Eva, I'm going to go to you first, because everybody is looking for this nirvana, this way to provide these services, but not necessarily understanding what technologies are out there that are going to be able to provide these systems, these services to the providers, to the users, people who need this technology. So what do you think?
I think that service providers need to change their mindset first and start to leverage a business-centric architecture. This architecture can offer them the scalability they need, real-time and end-to-end capabilities, process automation, and very important, converged and centralized data analytics. This is where the concept of the unified platform lies, with a self-service provisioning, a marketplace with self-service provisioning mechanisms. Service providers need to have customer partner management and a system that supports customer and partner interaction. And we go there. The key components we know that are products and service management, order management, and revenue management. They need to understand that in order to move forward.
George, what do you think? What are the alternatives out there?
I think actually I'm going to agree with Evi at least on one thing, which is very important. It's all about mindset, basically. So broadly speaking, I think I see like two roads to go down there, or let's say 2.5. So the first one is what I would call no business as usual. And what this means is, or what this actually translates to is, quite bluntly put, to something like, let the techies do their thing and we'll somehow manage. So this basically comes down to business specifying their use cases, their offerings and pricing and everything, and relying on IT to do the dirty job, so to speak. It doesn't matter whether it's internal or outsourced or whatever. It's the same old story. And to be honest, many organizations have been operating like this. So this is sort of a cultural legacy, and it doesn't really have to do with cloud or multi-cloud providers or anything like that. It's a spillover, really, from the way IT and business have traditionally been integrated, or actually the lack of integration. And so my guess is,
sorry, George, just finish your thought.
No, I was just going to say that for many organizations, the advent of a cloud has not really changed things that much. And basically what it means to them is, okay, so instead of my IT footing a bill at the end of the month, which has to do with, I don't know, how much power we consume, or how many new servers we have to purchase, they give me a bill where they give me some Amazon web service bill or whatever. But to them, it's still the same thing.
So how do we change culture? And I'm going to put that question to Janakiram. How do we change culture in these organizations as we start looking at these fairly alternatives out there? It seems like we can change technology fairly easily, but culture is tough to change, correct?
Right. So Dave, I totally agree with what Evi and George said. It's actually the mindset. So those companies which are offering the services to the customers, they need to understand and identify the complexity involved in bringing that front end that's going to be accessible to the customers, that layer that's going to make their business more long-term, more sustainable, and more customer-friendly. So today, it is still not an area that the service providers relate to. Everyone is focused on whether they pick up OpenStack or CloudStack or vSphere or Hyper-V based cloud. So everyone is actually buried into the technology challenges, technology issues, and bringing up a plain vanilla self-service portal. But it's time for the aspiring IaaS and SaaS providers to really seriously think about how can they kind of loosely couple these two elements. One is the technology, the delivery part, and then the whole business management part. And they are completely two different things. It cannot be an afterthought. It got to be baked right into their strategy and plan the day they decide to go into the business. But that doesn't seem to be the case with the current business models that we are seeing. So absolutely, it's a mindset, and it is high time that the providers recognize the significance and the impact of choosing the right business management framework. So since the question is what are the alternatives, again, I go back to my original analogy of IaaS becoming a marketplace. So there are two options, right? One is build, the other one is buy. So if I'm an e-commerce company, I would actually build my custom storefront and that's completely built from the ground up, or I can go buy an e-commerce framework from Magento, which is an open source, or any of those available frameworks. So in a lot of ways, interworks is like the Magento of the cloud provider. So the alternatives are pretty straightforward. Like in any other software business model, it's buy versus build. Simple.
So is it always buy versus build, guys? Is it I mean, are we ever going to, I mean, what are the downsides of building if that's an alternative? So, Janakiram, back to you. I mean, you know, you kind of brought it up. So if we're going to get down to a buy versus build decision, you know, we're going to talk about strengths and weaknesses next, but what, generally speaking, are the strengths and weaknesses of that? So, Janakiram, what do you think?
Right. So it's a choice there. Basically, they need to really choose between having an extremely granular control, having the right level of extensibility, tighter integration with their line of business applications, versus plug and play that kind of connects the dots and just brings everything together. So if you look at what Interworks has, it is basically a plug and play layer. They just drop it in front of their existing offering, and it instantly turns that into a catalog management system and so on. So basically it's granular control, transparency, extensibility versus using slightly an opaque approach where you rely on a predefined framework and you rely on their extensibility rather than bringing that into your core offering.
I think that's a great response. And for that, we'll move into kind of the essence of what we're talking about. So what are the strengths and weaknesses of the different approaches that we just identified? And we talked about one, you know, but what are the others? I mean, there's got to be, and let's be honest too, let's be, you know, as far as there's technology we want to throw at it, some of us on the panel are technology providers, and we certainly love to play with technology. But there's always the downside and an upside to leveraging this technology. So, you know, what are the realistic expectations that people can, you know, are going to have as they start moving in this direction? Eva, I want to start with you.
Well, service providers, if I understand correctly the question, Dave, is that you need to build a unified environment that they can get all the business logic they need. The ability to create as complex commercial policies as you want and be sustainable at the same time. By trying to build it themselves and integrate different systems, they need time, resources, and money. And building implementations may be good for in the case when you have a couple of services, but if they need to build a marketplace of services, VCR, infrastructure as a service, and software as a service, or both, this cannot scale up. And that's my response to that.
Okay, I think that kind of makes sense. So it's a leveraging technology effectively. Would you say that's, you know, that kind of that's how it's boiled down to? So in other words, the provider's ability to go out there and find the correct solutions, implement and put them in place, yes, and the ability to kind of match or back the requirements into the technology. Is that kind of another aspect of this?
Yes, yes, this is exactly where I'm at.
I think that's fair. So George, you're advising a client who's going to leverage this sort of technology, this sort of approach, or leverage a certain approach. What would you tell them about the strengths and weaknesses of these various approaches? And what advice would you give them as to, you know, where they should look first? And, you know, what's probably going to be the best solution or the best bang for the buck? And what are going to be the secondary and perhaps less obvious solutions?
Well, if somebody came to me with that question, I would refrain from giving a, you know, black and white answer. So, you know, this is I don't know, solution X is the best, and, you know, the rest. It doesn't really work like that. What I would do instead is I would try to actually see what are the dimensions on which to evaluate the solution. So, you know, instead of giving them a predetermined answer, try to work with them in order to be able to evaluate what's best for their needs. And in my mind, at least, there are definitely a couple of things that, you know, a couple of dimensions on which somebody can evaluate solutions. So, you know, for example, what are the capabilities of the OSS, the operational layer? So, are there any APIs that application providers can use to package their applications and in order to be able to seamlessly deploy and provision them on the solution? And what about the business layer, the BSS? Does it offer capabilities such as customer relationship management and billing and that kind of stuff? And do you also get an API? This is all fine and good, but what about if you already have it? It's not always a greenfield. Actually, in most cases, it's not a greenfield. So there are going to be existing solutions deployed in the organization, and you may or may not want to have a central point where from which you manage everything. And if you do not want to have that, then you must have an API supported at the business layer. So that's definitely another thing that you should be looking at. And then, as moving up the stack, you get to the storefront capabilities. So does your solution have its own CMS, for example? Can you customize it? Can you label it? Can you provide your own navigation there? And and concluding, I would point their attention to see what kind of services their vendor of choice can provide. So, some organizations may have in-house technical ability to do everything on their own, and some others may not. And most, I would guess, would be somewhere in between. So, they would have to have some consulting in place in order to manage on their own. And obviously, the price tag that comes along with that is a very important factor. But they don't need me, obviously, to tell them that it's probably the first thing they're going to be looking at. But in terms of technical capabilities and business empowerment, I think these are the things that you should be looking at.
So, Janakiram, same question with you. What advice would you give a client who was looking at this technology? And you heard George's responses. What would you add to that in terms of other areas they should look at and other things they should consider in terms of strengths and weaknesses of the different approaches?
I think I'll stick to what George mentioned. I think there is no standard blueprint. There is no thumb rule. I cannot be extremely black and white about this approach because this is not something that has been in the market for a long time. And I think what really works is a hybrid approach. For example, picking up an out-of-the-box solution and then integrating that with the backend line of business applications would make sense. Given the nascent market that we have in this, I think it's a little early for us to draw very granular strengths and weaknesses approach. It's going to be best of both worlds. It's almost picking up an existing framework and then modifying it to align with your business. So unless I completely look at their existing technology landscape, their customer SLAs, their operational model, it's very hard to define what is right for them. So I would pretty much stick with what George recommended. It's a hybrid approach.
Okay, so you guys are teaming up. It's a hybrid approach to this stuff. But let's kind of change gears again to the business benefits of this in terms of the strengths and weaknesses out there. There's an operational benefit, and there's which is a hard benefit. We can actually see that to the bottom line. And then there's a soft benefit, where you get into agility, the ability to kind of move into marketplaces, ability to change these services around needs and user requirements, things like that. And when you do the numbers, the agility, time to market benefit usually trumps the operational benefits, and we just don't seem to consider that. And I mean, am I assuming too much that we're going to get more of a benefit from agility and time to market advantages? I mean, anybody on the panel take that one?
Yeah, let me attempt that, Dave. So first of all, let's look at the key value that this layer brings. If there is no such layer that actually becomes a unified interface for the customers, there is a lot of spillover of data. There is a lot of fragmentation, of course, which is the next topic, but I'm jumping the gun to call it out because today the whole strength of any customer-facing business is capturing the data and analyzing it for insights and drawing a lot of patterns from it and taking corrective action. A lack of a business management system would mean that the provider is losing the competitive advantage of getting the insights from the customer patterns. So they actually lose that big time, and that's going to have a very long-term impact on their business. So I think that's going to be the key thing. So that's actually the main side effect of not leveraging the framework, or not building a solid BSS or an OSS system for the cloud providers. And again, just to recap what I said in the beginning, the cloud industry represents or reflects the state of telco business in its early days, because the telcos have gone through precisely the same challenges, and they have actually matured quite a bit. And at some point, the whole cloud services business will be a combination of telco, the OTT players, and a lot of e-commerce, because there's a B2C connect, a B2C flavor to it. So there is a lot to be learned from the telco OTT players in this business.
George, do you agree with that? Do you think that we can look at the telco industry as a way to kind of understand kind of the emerging patterns in this area, or are other industries also germane to this?
No, I think, okay, I can definitely understand why, the telco domain would be one of the first to come to mind when talking about this area, because obviously they're one of the ones that use it the most, and one of the ones that need it the most. And the metaphor is quite obvious, but actually I would like to point to a slightly different direction. Not that I disagree with any of what has been said so far. I definitely back that, but I just would like to give a different perspective. So, I have like an architecture and software engineering background, and I guess to many people listening to today's webinar that it won't mean too much, but I think what we have the opportunity to fulfill actually here is the long-gone promise of service-oriented architecture. So for the ones that are not familiar with that, the idea behind service-oriented architecture is basically exactly that, being able to to define your own workflows and, plug and play your services and all that jazz. And this hasn't really been realized to its full potential up until now. I think we now get a second chance at that through this business layer of the cloud. So, just bring that to mind. You're an application provider. You have some way to package your application and then give it out to some distribution channel. And this distribution channel has a standardized way of using your application in tandem with other applications from other providers, bundling them up in combinations that do meaningful things for your customers, and being able to have an end-to-end solution from the deployment to billing. And that, to me, is the great potential that remains to be unleashed here.
Yeah, it is funny how service-oriented architecture was all that in the bag of chips 10 years ago, and now it seems to be actually being deployed kind of under the new name of cloud-based APIs and API services, and the ability to leverage orchestration around those systems. So the patterns are exactly the same as we defined them 10 years ago. We're just now able to be a lot more successful with them because the bandwidth is there and the enabling technology is there, and we're a lot more disciplined and experienced in how to leverage these services. So it's something that's kind of funny in the industry right now. So Evi, give us some real quick advice around the strengths and weaknesses to close us out here of this approach. What would you tell someone who's coming to Interworks and for a solution, as to what they should be looking at? What's the elevator ride approach that you would provide them?
You said in the beginning, David, agility is an issue. Service providers now, they need to be able to launch a service, to differentiate, and let me give you an idea. Suppose a service provider has an offering. How soon then it can actually create the offering, and to whom this offering can address? It takes time. They need to be able to expand in new markets, and the competition is intense. Only with a system that provides a unified environment, and this can be accomplished. That's what we say to our customers. It's a chance for them to scale up quickly and effectively, to jumpstart in the cloud.
Okay, I think that's a great response and good advice as well. So moving on, let's move to our second poll question. And are you planning on implementing a fully automated marketplace and billing platform? Answer 1 is never. Answer 2 is in 2 years. Answer 3 is in 1 year. And answer 4 is we already got it. So let me go out and grab this question, and I'll go ahead and launch the poll. And you can now view the poll and answer as you need it. And I see everything coming in right now. So let's go around the horn here. So George, what do you think the most popular response is going to be, and what's the second most popular response?
I think the most popular response is going to be in 1 year, and the second most popular in 2 years, simply because I don't think most organizations have it there. I think they do want it, so they're not going to answer, never. So 1 year seems like, like a reasonable amount of time, and 2 years may be a little bit too far away.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. So Janakiram, what do you think?
I think I'll just flip it. The most popular answer would be 2 years. Because
okay.
My understanding is everyone is still figuring out the technology aspect and the billing and the marketplace platform. So
got it.
My choice is 2 and 1.
2 and 1. So you're thinking most people are procrastinating. And so finally, Evi, what do you think? Evi, what do you think?
Well, most people confuse eShop, just a simple eShop, as a marketplace. So the full automation in 1 year, it's something they think. That's what I believe. They think of implementing.
Okay. And I'm going to share results right now. Didn't work before. Now it seems to be working. So 15% never, 20% in 2 years, 45% in 1 year, 20% is there. So there seems to be more of an urgency around this, I think, than even some of the panelists thought. So even though we're talking about this topic, when you're implementing a fully automated marketplace and billing platform, this is something that needs to be higher in priority. Of course, people who are coming to this webinar are, listening, are basically here to find out more about this particular topic, so therefore they're going to have an accelerated interest in it. But generally speaking, I think this is reflective of people who are consuming this technology out there. Would you agree, George?
Yes, I was just looking at the poll results, and it's interesting to note that the "it's there" answer is actually it's a tie in second place with "it's there" and in 2 years. So I guess that means that there's, I don't know, maybe there's a lot of interworks customers attending already.
So, Janakiram, what do you think?
I'm a little surprised. I think the audience who voted for "it's already there," I think they are relying on the out-of-the-box solutions that already come with the proprietary solutions of VMware or System Center and stuff. Maybe they haven't gone to the extent of really implementing this. So that's my guess, because some of the commercial cloud vendors are already offering quite a bit of marketplace and billing platform capabilities.
Okay, and any final thoughts on this, Evi?
Yeah, I was right. 1 year. I think that service providers start to realize the importance of a marketplace and the importance of having a billing system that can support the cloud business. What I said is about subscription management and how you handle recurring subscriptions. It's a pain for service providers, and they start realizing that.
I think it's a good response. It's very promising that people have this technology on the radar screen. I thought we did this if we did this poll a year ago, it would have been skewed to never, don't know what it is, and probably not a lot of people showing up on the webinar. But now it seems to be front and center. And I guess kind of management in general, the ability to kind of get control of clouds and get these, business systems in place, really has gone up the priority list in a huge amount. At least I've seen with my client base in the last year or so. So it's fairly encouraging, because I think they're going to have this kind of infrastructure in place in order to make cloud work for them. So moving on to the next question, how can data fragmentation be mitigated, and what are the benefits of an integrated data ecosystem? Fairly complex question. So George, I'm going to go to you first. So what do you think of, how would you respond to this question?
Well, it's a dangerous question to ask a guy, who runs a consultancy called Data Orchestration. So if I go on too much, just stop me there. Okay, and
That's why
it
I
doesn't
picked
really
you.
have good. So it doesn't have really to do with the kind of solutions that we're focused on on today's webinar. I mean, it's a universal issue. So typically, the more applications or solutions or platforms an organization has, the more you end up with data fragmented all over the place. And there are approaches and solutions that help deal with that. Whether you call it whether it's a federated database architecture or a data lake architecture or APIs or vendor-specific solutions, whatever. And it doesn't matter whether you call it data integration or master data management. It's basically the same old problem. I mean, how do you get your data integrated within your organization? How do you get a definitive view? And I'm inclined to say that this is something every organization has to become aware of. And they have to familiarize themselves with that, and they have to develop their competency as soon as possible. Because after all, this is the big data era. So data sources are proliferating, external and internal, whatever. They're multiplying in terms of numbers and variety. They're expanding in terms of volume and of data they contain, and the velocity at which this data is growing. So the thing is, yes, you're going to say that big data is a buzzword, and we're tired of hearing about that. But the thing is, it's not just hype; it's real. So you have to have the associated skills to deal with that. The truth of the matter, however, is that it's not an easy thing to accomplish, and not every organization is at the point where they can claim to have the expertise to deal with that. And so we have to find some ways of dealing with that in the meanwhile. Let's say it's going to take. My guess is it's going to take a substantial amount of time for this knowledge to spill over and to become commonplace. So what do we do in the meanwhile? That's the real question. So the thing is, we have to have solutions in place that are not closed. So a platform that doesn't have any API, that doesn't support data migration options, that stores its data in proprietary formats, it's just no good. I mean, you're going to end up locked up in another data silo, and this is definitely not a nice situation to be in. So it's a big topic in and by itself, but it's obvious that the more holistic view you have on your data, the more useful they become, and the more you can do with them. And if you're going to have a platform that acts as a focal point for your infrastructure and application and customer data, you're in a much better situation to deal with data fragmentation than if you have a platform that is yet another data silo.
Okay, same question, Janakiram. What do you think? What would you add to George's response, which I thought was fairly complete?
Absolutely. I think he's an authority on this, so he summed it up pretty well. But I just want to add to that. So the first and foremost thing is the service providers not missing an opportunity to capture every touch point. Because unlike other business models, cloud can be accessed from multiple touch points. For example, API, command line, mobile, web, and a lot of other mediums. So it's absolutely important that none of this access mechanism is being missed out in logging and capturing the data. I think that's very critical for the service providers. Now, once they capture, then they can do pretty interesting things with that. For example, implementing a solid business intelligence solution or feeding that into a big data solution that they have. And over a period of time, this is going to give very strong insights into the customer usage patterns. And that actually helps them in fine-tuning and delivering and improving their service offerings over a period of time. So they should never underestimate the value of capturing the data generated by customer API calls and customer touch points, including the support, including everything that the customer is doing on this surface. So ultimately, the benefit of implementing an integrated data ecosystem is becoming more customer centric, because the more insights you gain from the customers, the better you become at your business. So ultimately, it's going to help you get that competitive edge and deliver more value to your customers. So that's the only way. And I think I only elaborated on what George already articulated pretty well, but I thought I'll just add a couple of points to that.
Okay, great. Eva, you want to bring us home on this topic? Yeah. How can data fragmentation be mitigated?
I just want to give you a real case scenario. A service provider, let's say, has a simple CMS as an e-shop. It uses Salesforce as a CRM, Zendesk as a support tool, QuickBooks for accounting, and a provisioning system. And I'm going to ask how many times the customer is kept as a record. How can you further work on this customer? You need to know your customer in cloud, but the information you need is partially found in 4 different places. What service providers usually do, they integrate these systems, and the result is high integration risk, high operational maintenance cost, and data management complexity. You can work like that. The concept of a unified platform eliminates all those risks. Of course, I will agree with George regarding the open environment, the open framework with APIs and data migration tools. It's very important.
Can't disagree with that. So moving on to our final question, what are some of the lessons learned from providers that have been successful at managing infrastructure as a service or a software as a service business? And I think this is going to be fairly telling. So I go out there and I start talking to providers and talking to the successful ones. What's the secret sauce that makes them successful? And Janakiram, I'm going to go to you first, and then I'm going to Evi, and then I'm going to George.
Yes, Dave. So when it comes to IaaS, we can't think of anyone better than AWS. They have been in the business for a long time, and they have been fairly innovating fast. And again, their secret sauce is leveraging the learnings of bringing services up to the speed and up to the customer's adoption rate. So AWS has been an advantage point. They have a lot of access, a lot of visibility, a lot of insights into what customers are doing, what kind of workloads. And that's actually driving the innovation and helping them come out with services that are much more aligned with the customer needs. So I think that's one visibly available evidence that we have from AWS, if I may call.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And
so, Evi?
Yeah, we can see big service providers that have dominated the market as AWS because they have systems to support their policies. They can differentiate in any level, either in customer support or in product offerings, and they know their customer. And they can do that at no time. For me, service providers have to have the tools that will support them to onboard new services fast and differentiate and help them expand in new markets. And I believe that this is a chance for service providers to benefit from business applications and platforms. And these tools can improve the competitiveness of service providers and help them enter the market with higher value cloud offerings, either SaaS or software as a service infrastructure as a service or both, and promote those offerings successfully.
Well said. George?
Yeah, well, you can't disagree with that, can you? Yeah, I mean, I agree with both of previous speakers. And just to add a couple of quick points. So, quick reaction, rapid deployment. That's, and you know, to link that to the poll we previously saw, it seems that providers are actually onto that. So, time to market is really important. Customization. That's another important thing. So, you know, it's not enough to offer like a vanilla or out-of-the-box pre-packaged application. You have to add your own flavor, your own look and feel to that. And CRM capabilities also very important in my book. You have to have, as Janakiram very well noted earlier, you have to have a holistic view of your customer, and so you have to have some sort of CRM, CRM capabilities in place. And there's also the non-technical aspects, if I may say so. So you know, the way you approach your business, the way you approach your customers, your customer serving, your customer facing employees, let's say, you can't really put your finger on that, but it does make a difference in the end. And just to wrap it up, we could also turn that question on its head, actually. So you know, we can also learn from failures, and we can also learn from from an industry under pressure today, such as the telco industry, as Janakiram pointed out before. So, today I was just reading in the headlines that KPN, some of you may know that, it's the biggest Dutch telco, one of the biggest in Europe actually. They just laid off a substantial amount of employees due to bad financial results. So, and this is a trend that has been going on for a while. And telcos are under pressure, and they have to somehow differentiate themselves. They have to somehow reinvent themselves. It's providing the same old services just doesn't cut it anymore. So they have to come up with something new, and being able to leverage this service-oriented architecture that the cloud really delivers to offer new services to their customers may be their way out of this predicament.
Yeah, I think so, and I think ultimately providers are going to have to become dependent on these services in order to run their businesses. And so to the point where I would say that you can't run or be a service provider without this sort of approaches and technologies that are innate to what you're looking to do. So it's, you got to consider the technology, you got to consider where these things are going, you got to consider, demand planning and all these sorts of things which really get into kind of the business aspects of running a provider. And as everybody's becoming a provider, including lots of enterprises out there, these things are systemic to your success. So moving to Q&A here, I got a question coming in from the audience. I'll go ahead and put this out to the panel. What does the group think of cloud service brokerage model? And let's relate that as to our topic here. What is the cloud service brokerage model, and how would you relate it into what we're talking about in this particular area, and how does it work? And George, I suspect you may have an answer to that, so I'm going to go to you first.
Yeah, well, the cloud service broker is actually very model is actually very much related to what we're talking about, and I think broadly speaking, you can say it's a superset of what we're talking about. So yes, we are talking about cloud service brokers, and in fact, we're talking about a quite specific subset of cloud service brokers, ones that are not just about enabling their users to juggle among different cloud providers, or private and public or multi-cloud or whatever. You have to add some sort of added value on top of that, because the truth of the matter is it's already a crowded space as it is. So to bring back full circle to how we started off this discussion. So it's not just about the infrastructure anymore. We're reaching the point where this is getting commoditized, more or less. So if you want to differentiate yourself, you have to move up the stack. That would be my quick answer to that.
Good response. And Janakiram, you want to respond to that as well?
Yes, Dave. So for me, cloud broker is very similar to an Expedia or a kayak.com, because today we have few IaaS providers, and it's fairly easy to know their strengths and weaknesses. But over a period of time, when there are many mushrooming and everyone offering exactly the same set of services, customers will turn around their parameters. So they're going to ask, if I run an SAP workload in Europe with so much of performance and so much of agreed latency, which cloud is best for me? So it's very similar to saying, I want to fly from Dubai to London and I don't want to have any more stopovers. So customers will choose those kind of parameters, and cloud brokers will negotiate with the backend providers like an Expedia does, and then they throw the response at them saying, these are the top 3 clouds that meet your parameters. So that's the future of IaaS, and that's what is going to be called cloud brokerage. And it's very relevant to what we are talking, because this layer of business management will ultimately enable better brokerage. And that's my personal view.
I think it's a good view. So Evi, let's go ahead and close it out with you. And I have a question here: is what should people look for out there in selecting this technology? At Interworks, what do you look to provide, which is going to provide key value to your customers, and what are they typically coming to you for?
Actually, they're looking for a business support system that can, as I said, scale up their cloud business. We have customers that want to, they have a direct business model, and they want to have an indirect business model as well. And they need the business support system to be customized based on the company's business model. They need to create resellers, become cloud brokers, and they need to sell their own services, and they need to expand. That's what our customers want. And most of our customers have realized the need to automate the business support layer, the business aspects of their company. We can see more and more customers towards that.
Well, great. That's a great place to end it there. I want to thank our sponsor, Interworks, and you can find them at interworks.cloud.com. It's right there on your screen, interworks.cloud.com. Please go there and take a look at their technology and what they have to offer. And also appreciate our panelists today, including Evi who's the Chief Marketing Officer at Interworks, Janakiram, who's Principal Analyst at Janakiram Associates, George, who's CEO and founder of Data Orchestration. And I want to thank you personally. I'm Dave Linthicum, Gigaom Research Analyst and Senior Vice President of Cloud Technology Partners. Please join us for the next Gigaom Research webinar, which will be on another very interesting topic with some great presenters and great panelists. I want to thank my panelists today, as well as you, the audience, for doing an outstanding job. Thank you very much for attending this webinar, and everybody have an awesome day. Take care.